Do you want some lunch? I would like some lunch. It would be nice to have lunch. I am hungry and it seems like all we have is this empty jar of Marmite in the fridge, a lime and a knob of ginger. I think we're gonna have to go shopping.
You mean we're going on a mission?
Butter, salted or unsalted? Clementines and tangerines, they're just the same thing, aren't they? Eggs and... Oh, not again.
Wait!
Boy, have we got a game to tell you about. Are you excited, Elaine?
This isn't QVC, Efka.
Well, we're excited because today we're talking about a game called Mechs vs. Minions. And just look at the size of this box. You could hide an entire Elaine behind it if you wanted to. Mechs vs. Minions comes from Riot Games. And if you've been following the board game scene and never heard of Riot Games, well, that's because they're not a board game publisher. They're a video game publisher, what them young'uns play. In fact, they are responsible for this little game called League of Legends. And yes, that one, the one that your grandmother's playing right now instead of doing her homework. And they decided they wanted to make a board game because they're a fan of board games and they made a board game for their fans. We're a fan of board games and everyone's a fan. Here's a picture of a fan. Fans.
In Mechs vs. Minions, you'll be playing a yodel.
A waddle?
A yodel.
Oh, Yodel, the infamously unreliable British postal delivery service.
No, but you've got the unreliable part right. Your yodel is a student at Mech Piloting School and as such isn't a very good pilot. But hey, that is what school is for, that and procrastinating. You'll be drafting cards that will let you execute different commands with your mech and you'll put them in your command line. And then when it comes to your turn, you will execute these in this order from left to right. But would the tutorial so simple? Mechs vs. Minions is a programming game, but it's not just any programming game, it's a cooperative programming game, meaning that you, together with other pilots, will be trying to stop an ever-flowing sea of minions that come at you on a wave of mutilation. But if there's one thing that's true about this game, is that your best laid plans of yodels and men will always be foiled. In Mechs vs. Minions, you will often spin when you don't want to spin, you'll blast your best weapon into nothing in particular, and then you'll charge in a direction that is completely useless. And you know what? That's funny. Let me show you how a turn works in Mechs vs. Minions and just how fun these powers can be. First thing you should know is that whenever you move over a minion, you stomp it to death and it's dead. But Skewer doesn't just let you stomp it. Skewer lets you move one space and then store that minion on your card as a meat shield. So whenever you take damage, you just remove the minion instead. You also have turning abilities, but they don't just let you turn, they let you do other things as well, like Cyclotron that lets you kill a target that's diagonally adjacent to you. Omnistomp lets you move, but it lets you move in kind of almost any direction you want, but in this case, forward is just fine. Finally, Flamespitter will take something out in front of you, and if you've upgraded it, it'll take more things out in front of you. And Ripsaw is just cool because it doesn't matter how far away the minion is, it just dies. Mechs vs. Minions could feel like a frustrating exercise in futility, but somehow it gets away with it. Maybe it's the lovely production values.
Or maybe it's the quirky theme.
Or maybe it's because...
There's a bag of spuds in the box.
There's not a bag of spuds in the box.
I wish there was.
Otherwise, your mechs would feel like an unstoppable force of minion slaying. But as it is, you're kind of biding your time and waiting for it all really to come together and explode in their faces.
But once again, Mechs vs. Minions isn't just a cooperative programming game, it is a cooperative programming engine building game. Come on, let me show you what I mean. So on your command line, like we mentioned before, you have different abilities, but when you get a new card, you can either put it into an empty slot or you can choose a slot that has cards of the same color and upgrade them. And they can be cards that are different entirely from the one that you had before. For example, if I have this level 2 speed here that lets me move 2 to 4 spaces, and I don't want to move anymore. I am entirely happy as to where I am. I can upgrade it to a level 3 chain lightning and then blast every minion adjacent to me and all the ones that are diagonally next to it. And that's what's cool about Mechs versus Minions. You see, it never leaves you feeling incapable. You always have something that you can do out of this web of amazing card abilities. You will fashion something that will, at some point, work.
You remember I said there was drafting? Well, exactly 5 cards will be drawn each round. Doesn't matter how many of you there are playing, and 4 of these will be drafted into your command lines. Now, this is 2 things. First of all, it's very funny because the card that you draft will have to go in your command line somewhere and might make you end up doing something you hadn't planned on at all. Second of all, it's quite challenging because you don't want to draft the cards that your other players want and mean that their mechs are ended up in complete poo-poo. There is one other thing. Now, do you hear that? That, my friends, is a spoiler train. Yes, I'm going to do a spoiler. Now, it's a very small spoiler. It's very, very tiny. But if you don't want to hear it, turn your YouTube sound off, put your fingers in your ears, hum the national anthem until the image on the screen goes away. The train is leaving the station. We are doing the spoiler. Here it is. The drafts are timed, which means that if you don't draft the cards you want in the time limit, the rest will be shuffled and a random one drawn to you, which means you might end up doing something that you hadn't meant to do at all.
Spoilers? Why are there spoilers? Is this a legacy game? Are there stickers? Will we have to tear up cards? No, no, and no. There are, however, 10 dossiers which are sealed and they have missions inside of them. So every time you play the game, you will have to follow a progression of 10 missions. And when you get a new mission, you have to unseal it. And you'll find some new things inside there, new rules, new objectives, and even some new abilities and cards. So the game changes as it goes along. Complexity is added and more things that can be done will be available to you. And of course, there is this thing which is also sealed, and we're not going to tell you what's inside, but it does live up to expectations, believe me. So that's nice. That's a very nice way to structure a game, because that power that you drew that you thought is going to blow up 3 minions or even maybe 10 minions around you in a 3 square radius, that might seem really, really good in a certain given mission where minion killing is important. But if minions are irrelevant, then that changes things up. And that power no longer becomes so good. And it makes you rethink things, which is great. I want dynamic elements in my board games. And this structure delivers it.
Minions. Let us tell you something about minions. Murder has never felt so satisfying. And that's because there are waves and waves of them coming at you all the time, and it only takes one hit to kill them. But that does not make them ineffectual, because Riot Games have come up with lots of scenarios that keep the tension up and it feels suspenseful. Minions can do you damage. If there is one next to you orthogonally on the minion phase, they will do you a damage. And that means taking one of these cards and putting it somewhere in your command line.
No matter how many of these you're going to get dealt into your command line, you will never feel like the situation is unmanageable. Your mech will never get destroyed, and it will always do things. It just might not necessarily do the things that you want it to do. And minion damage is sometimes very unpredictable. Let's say you started the minion phase with your mech standing right here. Then you have to roll this little die of evil. And if it somehow comes up yellow, all the yellow spawning spots will spawn minions that just happen to be orthogonally adjacent to you and then dealing you damage right in the next phase. And that might feel frustrating because all of a sudden 5 of your 6 commands in your command line do entirely not the thing that you wanted to do. But you always have a solution. Every time you're drafting cards, instead of taking a red or blue card, you can discard that card and discard one of your damage cards. And that might feel like it's happening a lot towards the later course of the game, but it is fine because your command line is already full of amazing things that you want to do You just need to be able to do them. Look, this wouldn't be an NPI video if we didn't have something negative to say about a board game we're reviewing, and such is the case with Mechs vs. Minions. First, it's this. It's not a very good rulebook. It is geared more towards newer players, people who are not used to board gaming, League of Legends fans who are discovering board gaming through Mechs vs. Minions. And boy, are you going to have an amazing time and find out that there's a world of these games out there that you should go and check out. But I wish it was a little bit more clear. It's trying to be non-verbose, and that's great. And it has so much theme, so much character, so much quirkiness that just draws you into the game, and that's great. Just wish it would explain things a little bit better, but that's fine. And here's the other thing. This overdrive ability that only triggers once you reach a staggering amount of 75 minion kills, well, you barely ever get there, and when you do, it doesn't feel that effective. And there are some other powers in the game that you get that you kind of look at and go, but really, that's the only bad things we have to say. Look, at this moment, I can't think of a better board game to introduce people to board games with. If you have someone out there who you'd like to say, hey, this hobby is full of fun, whimsy, character quirkiness, and interesting decisions as you play along, then get Mechs vs. Minions out, because literally this is now the gateway game. It might not feel like a gateway game because it has a little bit more rules than what, you know, people are used to, but unless you're teaching that your grandma, it really shouldn't be an issue.
But we know that your grandma loves League of Legends, so she might love this game too. The artwork might not be to everyone's taste, but honestly, I think it fits with the theme. And clearly, so much love has gone into this game that I really haven't got a lot of bad things to say about it.
We haven't got anything really. It's just lack criticism today because we're so in love. We're smitten with Mechs vs. Minions, and if you haven't got this box, if you think you're the sort of person, oh, this is silly, too silly. No, seriously, go out and get this game. You will have a whale of a time.
My mama cooks in Italy, mama swims in Argentina, mama's got a chunga, yeah. My mama's works in Venezuela, mama